So here in 1880 by 00 Games, I'm doing the 4th operating round, and if we come up here to the chart, you can see the earnings per share have rocketed up. The Bao Cheng, run by Train Mad Tina here, is got 4 trains, 2 twos, 2 2+2s, and she's just run for 280, and that's without a bonus 50 you get for being in this orange zone of the share chart. She's just moved up into that, and we'll get another 50 on her run next turn, so a minimum of 330, all being equal. So she's in a very strong position, and with a 40% stake in that, she just took in over 100 in dividends, which she thought was pretty sweet. Over here, Reckless Rob just ran for 170 and is kicking himself that he didn't also buy 2 of the 2+2s instead of just one of them, because there were 2 available when he was buying and he only bought the 1. And the problem he's got now is that he's just hooked up his Hukan Railway in Shanghai with the British investors in Hong Kong, which was also pretty sweet. It allowed him to token out Hong Kong. But he's got a run here now, which would be city, city, town, town. That's a 2+2 run. And city, town, town, town. That's also a 2+2 run. Both of which could be using his +20 bonus from Taiwan, and he could be making 120 on each of those runs and have 240 in income with 2 2+2s. And as it was, he made 170, and he's now had to buy a 3 train, but a 3 train still doesn't get him from either location into Taiwan for his +20 bonus. And so he's going to be lagging, he's about 70 behind per run where he could have been if he'd bought the other 2+2, just gone for it and bought 2 2+2s, and he'll be 50 behind now, and there's no way he can make that up. So Reckless Rob wasn't reckless enough and didn't see that opportunity there, didn't see that the 2 2+2s were going to be his killer decision at this stage of the game. And he could have almost been keeping up with the Bao Cheng in earnings with half the number of trains, and that would have been pretty sick, because then as the train limit decreased and Train Martina's earnings went down, as a result, his would have kept on rocking. So he's pretty sick with himself right now. But that's the way of the world. You live and learn, and you have to be looking ahead if you can to the kind of runs you're anticipating having. And with this few trains going, it is, or with the train rush as it is, not with this few trains going, with so many trains around, it's hard to commit to a 2 train or 2+2 trains when they're just flying through them. And he's got 800. He's just bought a 3 train. He's got 800 in capital. People have got 500, 620, 530. Only the Ningxi down here has got no money. So these trains, assuming that people have got space for them, as I think I discussed before, are going to fly off the shelves. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens. Anyway, he's just bought a 3 train. He's just kicked himself for not having 2 2+2s and really making some cash. And we're going on to the Nanjiang Railway, and the earnings of the other railways is going to be nothing like what these 2 have put up so far. They haven't got runs anywhere near as profitable, and they're lagging way behind at the moment. So we've just had an operating round in which the Bao Cheng Railway here, being run by Tina, ran for 33 a share, and the Hukan Railway with Reckless Rob here ran for a pretty impressive 28 per share, so not far off. And you can see the others trailing behind massively. The Ningxi ran for 11, the Jingha for 9, and the poor old Nanjiang currently running at 8 per share. So terrible stuff. No one's bought a train. We came back round to the Hukan Railway, and he doesn't want another 3 train. He's got absolutely no use for that. So he hasn't bought it. He's pushed us into the 3+3s, which he might buy. That might do him a lot of good, a 3+3. So he's pretty much going to buy one of those. But we are going to get a share round first. Now the share round is going to start over here, and actually Cautious Kate has some really interesting decisions to make about whether she ditches off some of her shares in order to start a new company, and that looks like a really good idea. And the reason it looks like a good idea is because she can have first choice of the new companies to start, and if she doesn't take it, we're going to come round to here, and our current leader, Train Martina, who's making, she's now had 2 runs running around, 28 and then 33 a share. So she has got 315 cash suddenly stacked up and 50% of the highest value shares, and yeah, she's just out in the lead. Giving her the first choice of the next company to start up looks like a really, really bad idea, and so it might be a really good plan for Kate here to sell some shares, because she hasn't quite got enough money to start a company, to float a company with what she's got. She's got 165. You need 30% now to float a company, and the minimum you could float at is 70%. So you need 210 to float a company now. But she could sell a share at 115 or so, bump herself up to around the 280 mark, and then she could buy 40% if she wanted to, or she could go 30% at 90 possibly, which would look like a good plan. So yeah, we're coming into a share round, and Kate has this key decision to make about, is she going to float a company, and if so, what? And then she's also got a decision to make about well, no, actually, that is her key decision. A, what she wants to float, and B, what damages other people's options. At the moment, I think we're looking at the SCR here, because the BCR is built track down here. It's got track that can easily join up into Hong Kong here, so it's got all kinds of routes coming out of it, down here, through here, down there. It looks like it's already established. If you give Train Martina that spot as well, this OO spot here, then you're just letting her exploit the same track over and over again for multiple companies and rack up loads of cash. And no one else seems to have as good a setup, so that looks like possibly the way to go. The only other sort of option really is to start up here with the BZU, but it doesn't look anywhere near as tempting as getting down here. And the other reason she might want to do that is because she'll get 2 tile lays to join up her Ningxi Railway here, with her Portuguese investors down here, and she really needs to do that to help her Ningxi Railway out. So there might be some decent synergies there if she starts that SCR, now that the track's all sorted. And the last thing to say is, I was posing this question: what happened if everyone's corporations were full of trains and no one could buy anything, and the game phase couldn't move on by the purchase of a new train? And the answer to that is, clearly, when you think about it, well, everyone's going to keep running and making money, and then at some point, like now, they're going to launch new corporations, and those corporations are going to be capable of buying trains, and that's going to force the game to stay on. So we won't hit some sort of endless death spiral where everyone's trapped with the trains they've got and no one can do anything, because obviously there will be new corporations starting, and we're about to do that now. So Cautious Kate here with the Ningxi Railway did what I suggested. She would, and sold her share of the Baocheng, which is earning colossal money at 33 a share, but it was things needed shaking up, and she couldn't just sit there on that one share and hope to win the game like that, because the owner of the Baocheng, Tina, player one was just then going to get to open the exact railway of her choice. So she took the Shichang railway here, took a 30% director share of it, so it's building in phases B and C. We've just come into phase B, and it's sitting in a nice place with lots of tracks set up for it. She can upgrade it straight away. She can start sort of building out to join up with her other railroad and therefore connect up her Portuguese investors, and then maybe get both of her railroads running quite well, and that will free up her railroad here to perhaps hook up with Beijing and starting to get routes going that way, you know, because she can upgrade here and build in there, and we'll get things going like that. So she's hoping that that second railroad will give her the opportunity to develop in ways that you know are far more profitable. So back down here, Train Martina then had a choice. She looked at this Cheng Kung Railway, which is obviously situated right within hers. It was too central within the Baocheng really to look great. It looked like there was just going to be loads and loads and loads of overlap, and maybe that would have been strong, but it wasn't feeling sort of expansive enough. With the SCR gone, the railroads out of Beijing looked like they needed just loads of work doing. That didn't look tempting, so she took the BZU up here with all the track laid for it already. Yeah, she's launched that BZU now. Again, with a 30% stake, permits in B and C phases, and that was also launched at 90. And then this player here, Balanced Brian, also had enough money to launch, to buy a 30% stake of a company at 70. He could put 210 in. That means it's a little bit undercapitalised relative to the share prices, but so he needed a railroad that had tracks set up so that it could just buy a train and start making income, and so he decided to token out this between in the middle of this sort of BCR network. Also hoping maybe to cut down, you know, its options, although it will just be able to upgrade that station and run right straight through it. So he probably can't, but you know, he's hoping just to be able to make some cheap income in there without having to do too much work while he gets the Jingha set up properly. And finally, that brought us on to, oh no, not finally, that brought us on to Reckless Rob here, who then didn't have great looking options, but he did want it to start. He didn't want to miss out on a railroad. I think this is a game of trying to run successful companies, and obviously the way the sort of investors encourage you to sort of hook up and take the capital and so on doesn't necessarily lead you to wanting to, you know, crash your first company. That doesn't look like what you're doing here. I mean, it's possible that you set up a company with just an A work permit and run it as hard as possible and then let it crash and burn, and it will be interesting to see what happens as the Baocheng's trains rust and where it goes from there. But you know, there's still 500 in capital in there. It's not in danger of bankrupting the Tina there. So anyway, yeah, he Reckless Rob was in a little bit of a quandary as to what to open. He ended up opening this Jinghu Railway, which is out of Beijing. He didn't want to get cut out of Beijing, and he figured it was building this way, and with a couple of tile lays he could probably hook it up into his network down the coast and possibly continue to, you know, to dominate the sort of coastal routes and hopefully have stuff running out between Beijing and Shanghai as they get more valuable. So he's thinking about that. And then poor old payout Paul here just didn't have any money to invest. Could have sold some shares, but even that wouldn't have got him to the point where he had enough money to open a company. And, you know, is there really a company left that he would have wanted to open? The only thing that's looking perhaps tempting maybe is this Wunan Railway here, and maybe just about, but an undercapitalised Last Choice didn't look great, and he thought he was better off. Well, he couldn't afford it anyway unless he'd sold like 20%, sold down to just his director's share. So he just decided to hold on to the priority marker, and so at least he gets first choice next time round. But the chances are that he's going to fall quite far behind now, because he's only got shares totaling 40% of companies, and if we look down here, there's 60% there, 40% there. This guy, I haven't given him his Jinghu shares yet, so but that will be 30, 70, 80%, 70%, 30, 40, 80%. So just having a 40% stake is he's going to fall behind on dividends, share value, and everything else. But that's just how it goes. Not everyone can be winning. So that's the share round done, and we're about to go into we're carrying on with what I think is operating round 5. And I must remember that the Hukan Railway now has the option to buy 3+3 and is going to do it. And the other thing I must remember is that it doesn't look like Train Martina actually paid for her Binju Railway shares, so I've got to deduct that cash as well. Well, the opening of all these new companies meant a sudden demand for trains, and that saw the sale of all the 3+3s, and that triggered a new stock round halfway through an operating round, as they seem to happen, and then the sale of the first 4 train, which has moved us into phase B3, a new phase, and this is suddenly the communist era, where there's no share price movement on the share price track. So, irrespective of whether you pay out or withhold payouts, your share prices don't move. And when I don't think you can sell shares or even buy. Can you buy? No sale of shares of direct, so you can't even sell shares either. And you can buy shares, but you can't sell them. So this is going to be an interesting phase, because, you know, obviously you can capitalise your company by withholding payouts at no cost to your share price. Equally, you can pay out large dividends if you've got them, but you're not getting the little share price bonus. Although, you know, the bigger your run, the smaller your capital gain, and the larger your dividend gain, basically. Because if your share price is moving 5 per share because of the payout, and you're paying 30 per share, obviously it's only a relatively minor part. But so there are those kind of calculations to do for companies to work out how badly they need to capitalise their railroad and how quickly, or whether they can afford to pay it out and carry on accumulating the cash to build their portfolio. What else is happening in this? Companies open now with 40%. I think we've got 4 companies that could still be floated. 2 out of Shanghai, 1 up in the mountains, and 1 up north in the middle of a load of railroad. But we'll have to see how things go with these, because, you know, most of these railroads have just bought trains and haven't run. It'll be really interesting to see what kind of earnings per share each of these railroads is capable of making, and what trains they demand and buy up and how quickly. And finally, what else is going on?
foreign investors and private companies are no longer active. So none of these are paying out anymore, although you can still use their special abilities, but they're not paying out anymore. And the private investors don't activate. In other words, they don't get a turn, they don't lay tiles, they don't run trains and accumulate capital, but you can still hook up with them to grab that share and the capital that they've accumulated. There's only these Portuguese investors left waiting to hook up with the Ningxi Railway here, and then all the private investors will be gone. And that reminds me, there are a couple of private companies that I need to do something with. So with the sale of the 3+3 that's just happened, this Wusong Railway can have 100 yen. And with the sale of the 4 that's just happened, this Rocket of China can be converted into a free 4 train. Both quite nice little bonuses there, being kicked out by those 2 privates. So I'll sort that out, and then we're going into the BCR's first operating round in the communist era.
So in the last operations phase, the 4+4 trains came out, and that's rusted the 2+2s. So it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of incomes early sort of leaders are now able to make, because the Bao Cheng is down to a 4 train. It was running 2 2s and 2 2+2s at around 33 a share, and last time it was running a 2+2, I think, and a 4 or something, and you can see it's dropped right back into the pack in terms of earnings at 24. The JHA 25, BZU 23, and JR 22. This opening company, the NXR, really struggling, still on 13 with just a 3 train on it. And the runaway leader at the moment, the Hukan Railway out of Shanghai, making 39 a share with a 3 train and a 3+3. I think it had a 2+2 on it as well, which just rusted. But with those 3 trains, it made 39. It'll drop back a little bit now. So the Bao Cheng with just a 4 train is the first company to operate. And the other thing here, all the private investors have now hooked up, and one thing I haven't done is given the Ningxi its opportunity to token down here, which has to happen because the Ningxi will want another train, and then options to run in lots of different places, and option to lay track in lots of different places. But the Ningxi Railway hooked up with their Portuguese investors down there, and having done that, I thought I'd take a look at the scores. Now that everyone has hooked up with their private investors, had their 50 bonus, had their extra share, it was worth looking at where we're at in terms of scores. So Train Martina, first player with the Bao Cheng and the Binju Railways on 1,088 out in front. Balance Brian with the Jingha out of Shanghai, and just opened the Chenkong Railway, which has got strong trains on it actually. It's got a 4 and a 4+4, so it's going to be fun to see what that is going to start making in terms of cash. Down here probably hasn't got routes to run those, but it's going to be interesting to see what it can pull together in terms of cash. Anyway, he's got 869 as a score. Reckless Rob with the high flying Hukan Railway, and the Jinghu also out of Shanghai now in second place with 1,021, so pretty close. And then our 4th and 5th players, Payout Paul and Cautious Kate, struggling to reach 800, so way behind, 400 off the pace now. This guy's still only got, Payout Paul's still only got 1 company, so he's really struggling and hasn't really, he'd have to sell to find the capital to float something new. So, and I think, what are we into? Opening with 40%, it'll soon require 60% to float a company, so Yeah, he's really struggling to get a second company going, and Cautious Kate also struggling, although the Ningxi is, with its 1-3 train, just hooked up and has just acquired enough capital here, 450, to pick up one of these 4+4s if she can get it. I don't know how many there are left there. There may only be 3 left. So she may, in fact, let's have a look. There's one. These cards are quite stick together. No, there's 3 left, and she's 4th to operate. The Bao Cheng would love to pick up a 4+4, but doesn't have the cash unless it can get up to 450. It's not likely to get a 230 run though with just 1 train, I don't think. So yeah, so the Bao Cheng may struggle to get that 4+4, in which case, and the Hukan will definitely buy one if it can definitely afford one. The HJR can also afford one and will almost undoubtedly buy one. I think she's going to get the last 4+4 with that company, and that will sort it right out. So yeah, lots of interesting things. Even though the scores are quite disparate at the moment, I've got the feeling that Trey Martini is going to drop back into the pack a little bit, because the Bao Cheng's now been neutered after its early running, and she's got to find some new way of capitalising on her additional funds. Reckless Rob looks good to catching up. Cautious Kate, I think, has play still. Balanced Brian still has play, especially with the Chen Kung coming online, and he's got 50% of that. They'd love to get these this out of the communist era, so that they can start making capital, share price, gains as well. So both of these, Cautious Kate and Balanced Brian, both with play in them, with good looking railways and possibilities to have good train portfolios, and the Ninjiang here, payout pool, looking really, really hosed at the moment. Coming into this operating phase then, I think I'm going to wrap this one up for now, and yeah, it could be a while before I get back to the game, unfortunately, because of various lockdown issues. So I'm going to call it here and stitch these together, and then I think leave the game where we're at until I can get back to it.